Hi, everyone. Denise Wilson here with the Association for Healthcare Denial Appeal Management. I'm filling in for Carla today as your host for our March webinar, almost the end of March. Happy spring, everyone. And I'm really excited to have our two speakers here today. Who are going to talk about the emerging role of artificial intelligence in healthcare denials and appeals. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to go very close to probably 45 minutes or so, and we will try to say sometime at the end for you all to ask any questions. We'll try to answer those for you. Okay. My mouse is just a little slow today. Let me see if I can. Make sure I've got control of the keyboard here. There we go. Oh my goodness. Might be just a little bit rusty. You know, I haven't been gone all that long. I have been gone for a couple of months, but we'll get through this. So today, our webinar is on GoToWebinar, and if you're not familiar with the platform, you can join audio by either your computer audio or using the phone call. You can download handouts by going to the handouts section, and then you can also submit questions and comments via the questions panel. So as I said, if you have questions about today's presentation, please put them in the questions chat box, and we will do our best to answer those at the end of the presentation today. We do offer free CEUs to AHIMA members only. You do have to be an AHIMA member as of 5 p.m. today in order to get your free CEUs. You have to attend the live webinar for at least, that says 50, yeah, at least 53 minutes. That is correct. 53 minutes. You also have to complete the survey, and that survey will pop up automatically at the end of the webinar for you. You shouldn't have to do anything. It's a short little survey, but we have to do that for the CEUs. The CEU certificates will be emailed to you generally within a week of the webinar. They are not available for watching the recording of this live webinar. So we do record all of our webinars, and we do post them on our AHIMA website, so you can go back and rewatch them. And there are no individuals in a position to control content for this activity that have any relevant financial relationships to declare. When you fill out your survey, you will be asked to select your desired CEUs. So we have them for active, NARI, CCMC for case managers, AHIMA, and ANCC for nurses. I also want to remind you that I have at the top there winter workshop. It's actually spring workshop now, 2024 virtual spring workshop, and we're hosting that May 14th through May 23rd. There's various days. It's not the whole 2 weeks that we're doing workshops, but there's 4 different workshops, 4 different tracks that you can sign up for. Interactive tracks, we're going to cover crucial topics, vital to understanding the ever-changing nature of denial and appeal management, specifically designed for healthcare professionals. And what's new also for this workshop in May is we will be offering CMEs, which are the physician continuing education, which we have not been able to offer in the past for our webinars, but we are getting those available for you for the virtual spring workshop. So you can go to our website and sign up for that. We've had great response to that workshop, so I hope you'll check that out. A little bit about us. We are the Association for Healthcare Denial and Appeal Management. We're the only association in the country really that's dedicated fully to educating folks on denial and appeal management, because there really wasn't anywhere to go find education. You know, we've all learned on our own from the person who was there before us, and from, you know, a lot of our own study and trial and error. So that's really what we're here for. We're trying to develop an even playing field where we can make sure that your claims are being paid in a fair manner. Okay, so trying to make those medical insurers make proper payment decisions on your claims. A little bit about PayerWatch. Our webinars are supported through generous support from the PayerWatch organization. They have software services called Veracity. They are a leader in denial prevention industry, and they provide services to providers in protecting your revenue. And then Appeal Masters is the services side of the business. We have trained thousands of folks around the country in denial appeal management. We believe in taking your appeals all the way, and we use a clinical legal approach for success. I do have to read this little disclaimer. The Association for Healthcare Denial and Appeal Management publishes and distributes materials on its website and through our webinars that are created by our members or invited industry subject matter experts for the benefit of all. We do not certify the accuracy or authority of the materials. They're distributed and presented as research information for you to use in conjunction with other research deemed necessary in your independent professional judgment. We claim no liability in relation to reliance on content of the materials, and the views expressed in the materials are views of the authors, do not necessarily represent the views of ADAM. Any references are provided for informational purposes only, and they do not constitute endorsement of any sources. And we have no conflicts of interest to declare for anyone involved in the content of this presentation. Okay, our two speakers today, Dr. Kendall Smith, he's a senior fellow in hospital medicine. He's currently the chief medical officer for PayerWatch and Appeal Masters. He's a leading appeal educator for hospitals and health systems. He's been deeply involved in denial appeal management throughout his hospitalist career. He's served as a physician leader on hospital revenue cycle management teams while also serving as a physician advisor for clinical resource management. He's also an AHIMA ICD-CM PCS approved trainer and ambassador. Also, Dr. Smith and I will be at the American College of Physician Advisors Conference, NPAC 2024 in Coronado in a couple of weeks. And Dr. Smith is speaking on, I have this written down for you, Tuesday, April 16th at 3:30. He's going to be giving a talk on successfully appealing high dollar denials involving NCDs and LCDs. So I hope you'll come see Dr. Smith and I at NPAC and attend his talk. And I'm really excited to have Vivek Radhakrishna with us today. He is president and CTO at PayerWatch and Appeal Masters, and he has more than 22 years of experience designing and developing software. He's worked across multiple domains, including banking, telecommunication, K-12 education, healthcare. He's been with PayerWatch for greater than 8 years, and he believes that customer is the most valuable asset an organization can have. All software design should be driven by an unrelenting pursuit of end user focus and experience. Let me tell you, he is Johnny on the spot when any of our clients need anything technology-wise for PayerWatch and Veracity. And so I'm really excited to have him here today talking about artificial intelligence. Our learning objectives, at the end of the webinar, you should be able to identify at least one benefit, one regulatory limitation, one ethical consideration when you're considering artificial intelligence within denials and appeals. Okay, so I'm not sure who put this slide together for the presentation today, but I just love this. Talking about advanced technology and magic.
Hey, Denise.
And yeah.
Denise, the slides aren't advancing.
The slides aren't advancing.
Oh my goodness.
We've been hijacked by AI somewhere.
Okay, sorry guys. Gosh, I'm just chatting along.
Sorry.
No, thanks. I'm down to one monitor today, and I usually work with two, and so just give me a second. Okay. That's really interesting that let me just make sure that I'm down as the presenter, which I am. Can you see that I've taken it out of presentation mode?
No.
No.
Okay. I know what's going on. I had paused my screen. There we go. Now, can you see a different?
Yeah, but you need to play from beginning because we're in
Okay.
mode. So, yep, F5
Yeah.
and F.
Okay. All right. No problem. Well, you didn't miss anything fun, so. Okay, let me see if I can go back. There we go. Now, how we doing?
We're good now.
Looking good. Okay. Thank you, guys, and sorry, everyone. I'm kind of in semi-retirement mode for any of you who come to our webinars on a regular basis. I semi-retired about 2 months ago, and so getting back into it and filling in for Carla today, but we'll make it work. Okay, so anyway, I was saying I just love this graffiti wall. Does this look familiar to you, Kendall, or do you think Carla put this in?
This was me.
Oh, that was you. Do you want to talk about it, Vivek?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. I wanted to start this with this graffiti wall because I think it kind of illustrates where we are with our understanding of AI right now. Some of us think it's magic, some of us, because we can't explain it or because we don't really know what it is, think it's magic, and other people try to actually interpret it in ways that may not necessarily be correct. At the end of this 15 minutes, obviously, I would be lying if I said you would be understanding AI completely, but hopefully we can at least demystify what AI is and what AI is not. And you should be able to at least answer those questions for yourself at the end of these 15 minutes. Denise, if you could go to the next one. The next one as well, Denise.
Okay.
Okay. So artificial intelligence, like I said previously, is technology that we've been living with for like a very, very long time. We've actually all used AI in one form or another in the last decade, but because of the prevalence of AI and because of the fact that AI is now available in the form of chat GPT or other ways in which we as a consumer interact directly with the technology, I think people have started to actually take cognizance of what AI is, and everybody's trying to explain it to themselves. Us developers have something that we actually joke about. We always say that when people can't really explain what it is that they're trying to do within their software, they actually claim it's AI. And AI is essentially, the holy grail of AI is to try and mimic human intelligence, but so far that's still just a holy grail. It's not something that's been attained, but we're making strides towards getting there. But the actual goal of getting to intelligent AI, and intelligent obviously depends on who's actually defining what that intelligence is, but to actually get to the point where we actually say it can actually mimic human behavior, we're still a ways away. I mean, despite all the strides that have been made in the last decade, we're still a ways away from there. If you go to the next one, Denise. So AI typically is broken up, is classified depending on whether it's functional or whether it's creational. So functional AI, you essentially have reactive AIs, which basically are programmed to do one thing, and they can do that one thing really, really well. The best example of this is IBM's Watson, or their chess program that actually bet Gary Kasparov. We use reactive AI in everyday life when we actually log into Netflix or log into Hulu and use their recommendation algorithm. That's actually a form of AI, because that can actually read your past viewing experience and then match that up with their existing database and actually serve you more content to watch. The next type of functional AI is limited memory AI. This is basically trying to get to the point where you actually have some memory of like what has been done before, and you could actually extrapolate based on past experiences, but it's still not really at the point where you can actually take those experiences and actually use that in a completely different setting. That is what theory of mind AI is trying to get to, because that's basically trying to say, if somebody behaved in a certain way 3 days ago and you had 5 other people who behaved that same way, would they behave the same way in a completely different setting, in a completely different environment? And the way our mind works and is able to actually run 3 different threads parallelly and try to actually draw inferences from there, that's what theory of mind AI is trying to get to. And self-awareness is basically what I mentioned before. That's what AI developers want to get to, but we're still a very, very long way away from it. The best example of limited memory AI that I have is basically the self-driving capabilities that cars have right now. They are able to basically look at your behavior and try and predict based on their understanding of the map and their understanding of like where the obstacles are. They're able to basically determine whether to make the right turn, whether to make the left turn, whether to actually put the brakes on. But again, because they can't really draw inferences that are not in their system, they may not always work in every single situation. That's why we still, full self-driving is still not, we're still not quite there. I mean, despite what people say, we're still not quite there yet.
I'd have to say that like 6 months ago or 8 months ago, I had a semi-autonomous car that got into a just mind-bending accident at 50 miles an hour because the safety systems in it failed. The predictive braking and all the recognition, and it failed to recognize the guy in front of me hit a wall. And so none of the automatic braking, seatbelt tensioning, and none of that happened in it. And it led to just an epic accident, and it was all traced back to failures of the prediction of the AI modules in the car. So don't stake your life on any of these types of AI at the present time, I think, is one major take-home message for everybody.
Sure. That's probably good to know, Kendall. I don't think I'm always too scared to use full self-driving.
Yeah, it's full self-crashing is what I would call it.
Denise, if you could go to the next slide.
There we go.
So the other way of classifying AI, what we looked at was functional AI, but on a very, very broad level. AI is classified as narrow AI, which is basically the reactive AI that we actually discussed before. Narrow AI is basically designed to actually do one thing, and it can do that one thing better than most humans can, because it can compute way faster than our human brains can, and can actually present out those results really faster, which is why we are able to do the Netflix recommendation algorithm. Like I said, is like a perfect example of this. It's able to compute all the data that's actually there inside Netflix database, look at your past viewing behavior, match that up with like other users' behavior, find common patterns and actually show you recommendations, and can do all of that in a split nanosecond, something that humans cannot do. And this is right now where we are with AI. Most AI that's actually currently being developed is actually narrow AI, even though the big experimental labs and the universities are actually trying to work on other types, but most applications right now that use AI in any capacity are typically using narrow AI. You could go to the next slide, Denise. General AI is basically what we is an amalgamation of theory of mind AI, which we actually looked at in the previous slide, and the super intelligent AI. It's basically AI that can actually learn and apply knowledge across different domains. So the first part of the definition, general AI, refers to AI system that possess the ability to understand, learn, and apply knowledge. That part, most scientists actually have it down right now. So we are actually at a position where AI is able to understand, learn, and apply knowledge, but it's across the different domains part of it that nobody's actually been able to solve, and they're still actually working on it. So while it can do certain things really well, it is still a very, very long way away from like human intelligence. It can't even be compared right now. Could go to the next slide, Denise. And this super intelligent AI, I just put this slide in. This AI doesn't really quite exist right now, even though there are scientists and labs that are actually working on it. OpenAI, the company behind ChatGPT, is currently working on it, but it is still a very, very long way away from like anywhere near ready for actual use. Right now, it's still very much in the experimental phase, and this, despite all the reports that you read in the newspapers, this type of AI does not really exist right now. So any newspaper, any reports that you read of AIs being able to basically take over mankind, all of those right now is still science fiction. We're not there yet. You could go to the next slide, Denise. So while we talk about AI, we need to talk about the responsibilities that we have as a society to actually make sure that the technology that we use is actually correct and does not really lead to any kind of unintended side effects. So the first problem that people have with AI is the fact that because all AI is doing is actually reading data that someone has fed to it, if the data that is being fed to it actually has inherent bias in it, the AI, the output of using that AI is also going to exhibit the same bias. So if you were to read a certain newspaper that actually exhibited a certain bias, and if that was all that was fed to that engine, the output from that would also exhibit that same bias. So it's very, very important for developers and for these companies that are actually manufacturing and marketing AI, like Microsoft, Google, OpenAI. It's very important for them to actually make sure that they actually have all diverse forms of training data. If you go to the next slide. Along with that, the next thing that we need to be concerned about is privacy and data security. If you remember, AI, all it's doing is basically reading data that's actually been fed to it. So if the underlying data that has been fed to it is actually, say, running because somebody's actually managed to write a screen scraper software that actually takes data from someone's Facebook, there is a risk that that data that is private may actually end up being used by AI to actually make assumptions or make deductions that are incorrect. And obviously there is an ethical consideration to the fact that somebody's private data is now available for consumption for anyone across the universe, anybody who's actually using this particular AI. In our particular domain, the privacy is all the more important, because if you were interacting with a chat GPT prompt and you actually ended up putting in actual patient information, that patient information now resides in somewhere in someone's database. So it is very, very important for us to make sure that when we interact with AI, do not really put in any patient information, make sure that it's already identified, because that information can be misused and that information is available for use by anybody else. If you want to go to the next one, Denise. The last and the final one, obviously there are multiple ethical considerations, but the most major one is, right now AI is pretty much like a black box. Nobody really knows how these programs actually work internally. So they don't really know how, when you actually type in a question, they don't really know how the answer is actually arrived at. And that algorithm needs to be transparent, but there is obviously a push-pull between the companies and the regulatory authorities, because the companies want to keep their algorithms private. The regulatory authorities want to actually have more control over, not control, but they need to know what exactly is happening, and never the twain shall meet. So there's always a constant push-pull amongst those two, sometimes conflicting viewpoints. I'm going to go to the next slide, Denise.
Mm-hmm.
So for our purposes, right now, the reason why AI is prevalent and everybody is talking about AI is because over the last 4 years, we have all started to work with what is called GPT, and that is nothing but generative AI. And GPT is basically something that was actually developed by OpenAI some years back. And what it does, GPT is actually part of like a much larger subset of AI called large language model. And all GPT is doing basically is allowing you to basically interact with a prompt, and you have the ability of actually, for lack of a better word, talking with a computer, because you could ask a question, the computer could spit out an answer, and you could actually, based on the answer that was given to you, could actually ask it another question, and it's actually able to narrow down the answer based on the previous answers. That is something that we were not able to do before. And as the word implies, as the definition implies, generative AI basically allows you to actually generate content based on content that it actually has. So the version of GPT that we have right now only has data that has been fed to it as of April 2022. So that's why you don't really have the latest news or the latest technology there. There is a paid version of GPT that actually has data as of like 2023, but it's not yet been released for like public right now. And generative AI basically allows you to generate content, generate slideshows, generate pictures based on information that it already has. So it has the ability to look at a vast database of pictures, and if you tell it to say, draw you a picture of a goat sitting in a sunset on a Dubai sand dune, it's able to find out through its database, get a goat, get a picture of Dubai, and get a picture of a sand dune, and actually it's able to merge the three to actually give you that picture that you were looking for.
Vivek, while you're talking along these definitions, would you be able to speak briefly to the concept of AI hallucinations, which I think is important as we move into writing appeals using AI?
Sure. I mean, what Kendall is referring to there as AI hallucination is basically the fact that because AI is actually reading data from disparate multiple sources, depending on how you actually word the question, we may all ask the exact same question, but because the wording is different, the answer may be completely different. So there is a very good possibility that you could actually modify a word here and a word there and ask the exact same question, but come out with like 3 different answers. And Kendall will actually demonstrate that when he actually goes through his presentation where the same question presented 3 different ways gives 3 different answers, even though the input is more or less exactly the same.
Mhm.
Denise, if you want to go next. And actually, Denise, if you want to just go over, because some of this is actually covered in the last slide. So if you want to just go over to the last slide, I can actually talk through there.
Is this your last? Let me know when I get to the last one.
It's actually, it goes a little bit more. So I just want to talk about the fact that AI is already being used in healthcare in ways that, so if you actually, it's one after this. One more. Right. So I wanted to basically touch on this slide because we're all under the impression that AI is something that's totally new. If you want to go back to the previous ones, Denise. That AI is something that is relatively new, but the truth is that AI has actually been around for like a very, very long time, and we've been using it in many applications without really knowing that we're actually interacting with AI. So for example, in patient care, we've all used, we've all been to the hospital, and we've actually had them come out with charts that actually are generated by AI. If you go into medical imaging and diagnostics, if you ever had like an MRI in recent times, you had a mammogram, that internally the software there actually uses AI to actually spit out or to give you the correct output. Physicians, there are already surgical robots that can actually do surgery, very limited type of surgery again. And research and development, obviously there is a prevalent use of like AI in drug discovery and drug design, and especially in trying to find out the side effects of like drugs, because AI is able to comb through vast amounts of data and actually find patterns where humans may not be able to find those patterns. With that, because I just touched on AI applications, healthcare, I'll hand this over to Dr. Kendall Smith so that he can actually talk over how ChatGPT actually impacts denials and how AI actually impacts appeals and denials right now.
Thanks. That was tremendous, Vivek. It's great to have some baseline knowledge of what we're getting into here. The one thing that I can say that's constant about AI as relates to health insurance denials and claims is that its use is exploding. I remember maybe about 18 months ago, just hearing about ChatGPT and starting to play around with it and asking it to do some simple tasks. What has transpired in that 18 months is just an explosive growth of various forms of AI and processing insurance claims and denials, and the market is moving at such a fast pace that litigation and legislation are unable to keep up. The tools that are coming out that exist to help adjudicate claims, make determinations, are light years ahead of where the federal government, CMS, is right now in trying to understand and rein in its use. There have been a bunch of lawsuits that have surfaced in the last 6 months. We'll go through a couple of them that have talked basically along the same lines, that the idea of a medical director, a nurse reviewer, reviewing an individual claim and making a medical necessity determination no longer exists. If you want to go over to the next slide, we'll take a look at a couple of these suits by example. So this was a class action lawsuit, which was referenced on the previous page, against Humana under their Medicare Advantage program. The same type of suit was filed against United Healthcare, and they were both using an AI model called NH Predict, which wrongfully, allegedly denied medically necessary care for elderly disabled patients who were covered under Medicare Advantage. The take home from this was that this program was allegedly known to be faulty. It was overriding medical necessity determinations made by patient physicians that the services being requested were in fact medically necessary. It appears from what's being written that the programs allegedly, got to be careful as you tread into this, were looking for matches or mismatches between clinical diagnoses, ICD-10 or ICD-11 codes, and CPT codes that would be expected to be ordered to diagnose that condition. So if a doctor were to order, something that they felt was necessary in the work of, let's say, a patient with interstitial lung disease that was not considered appropriate by the insurer, this program would rapidly go through, bundle these up, and then serve them up for a rejection to be signed off on. And they were able to do massive amounts of these claims in a short period of time. This legislation or this litigation is ongoing right now, but it's one of several cases. And if we move to the next slide, we can take it a look at another one, which will give you an idea of how little time, if you want to go on to the next slide, is actually being spent in these cases. Over 2 months, according to the allegations in this lawsuit, Cigna had allegedly denied more than 300,000 claims, with healthcare professionals spending a little over a second on each claim. And you consider in that 1 second, they need to consider the code. They probably have access to some portion of the patient's medical history through prior claims, the request for a service, and then they need to look at Cigna or Evercore, whoever is providing coverage guidelines for those diagnoses and make a determination as to whether it fits. All that was happening in 1 second. What was happening was essentially what we talked about earlier, was these cases were being bundled up and then mass signed off on by doctors who allegedly, when signing off on the denials, weren't even required to open patient medical records for review. And I'm speaking personally, not on behalf of PayerWatch or the company, but having read some of these denials and the responses that we get to denials, I think I speak for a lot of the folks here today, where we feel that these things are just getting rubber stamped. And if you want some idea of what rubber stamping looks like, this ProPublica report really goes into great detail about how that's happening and how your gut feeling and your sixth sense is probably right, and is going to be borne out more and more. If you could move to the next slide, Denise. So Medicare, February 6th, though a little over 6 weeks ago, kind of got behind this, and they came out with a frequently asked questions, FAQs, related to a recent final rule, CMS 4201-F. And this is about an 8-page document. It's telling in what Medicare cautions, but it's also equally telling in how obvious these statements are and how far behind they sit in terms of some of the technology that Vivek had mentioned. For example, CMS said it was okay to use AI or algorithms for coverage determinations by Medicare Advantage plans. However, Medicare Advantage plans remain responsible for making coverage determinations based on each individual patient's individual circumstances in accordance with the rules that are codified at 42 CFR Title 42. So they were very clear that while Medicare Advantage programs could develop these AI tools to assist in the claims adjudication process, that each claim had to be decided based on the unique medical needs of that particular beneficiary. There were significant concerns, and I think Vivek, you spoke very well about this when you're talking about development, about the potential for discrimination that might exist in the development of a program. CMS reminded Medicare intermediaries, Medicare Advantage programs, that AI has the potential to exacerbate inequities in the healthcare system for the reasons that Vivek went through, and that legally they're bound to the non-discrimination requirements of the Affordable Care Act. So they can't discriminate on the basis of the ACA and probably the ADA, and using these types of algorithms may set up just those patterns that Medicare was concerned about. Again, talking about the discharge process, post-discharge care, Medicare said it's okay to use AI to help put guidelines together of what constitutes a time for a patient to be discharged from a hospital where their care should have progressed to be discharged, but that does not excuse looking at an individual patient's care or progress. So yet again, they can't abandon their requirement to consider each claim individually. If you are getting denials from Medicare Advantage plans that at some level smack of a preconceived denial or a preconceived rejection without any specificity to the individual patient being considered, I'd encourage you to send that as a complaint or bundle them up for your hospital and send them as a complaint to CMS saying, we don't believe that there's evidence here that each of these cases was considered individually. We're concerned that this was in violation of the warning that was put together on February 6th. The February 6th document's a quick read. It's 6 pages, 3 of it relate to AI. I'd encourage you to just Google Medicare Advantage, CMS, and artificial intelligence. You'll find it, and you can find more specificity about CMS's position in it. But you can see from the three things that were highlighted in this document, they're very general, very nonspecific, and they are put forward in such a way that there's going to be all sorts of programs involving AI that it hasn't even considered that are going to come into play, and I think we're going to be up against. So if you want to go to the next slide, Denise. One of the anxieties I've heard in the appeals community, especially last year when there was a lot of buzz around ChatGPT, was that those of us that spend our day writing appeals, doing peer-to-peers, et cetera, are going to be replaced by robots in the not too distant future. That we're going to have Humana's or United's AI robots or AI programs generating denials, and the hospital's AI program responding to those denials. And I want to go through a couple of examples where similar anxiety in other trades has occurred, and showed you how that's come about and why I think that fear is a little unfounded. So if you go to the next slide, Denise. What some people had forecast, and Vivek and I have kind of joked about this a little bit, which was sort of a machine denial ping pong, where an AI program from a payer spits a denial out, the hospital computer spits the response back, and then the rebuttal comes back, and we're going back and forth from machine to machine, just like a ping pong game. I don't see that happening for a couple of reasons that we can get into here if we get to the next slide. Aviation, I think, is a great analogy to where we are and where we're going with artificial intelligence in the denial community. I almost would shift the word from artificial intelligence to assisted intelligence. You go back 10 plus years in the world of pilots with the development of fly-by-wire systems, autopilots, and everything else, and there was a lot of supposition that we could get away from actually having pilots on a flight deck and having fully autonomous flight. What's come about are computers that monitor all phases of the flight, but there's still a requirement for human beings to monitor computers' outputs. Computers fail, they make mistakes. Human beings need to be there to consider, what a computer is proposing or doing. Is it reasonable under the circumstances? Is it correct? And if it's not, respond to it to keep accidents from happening. And I think that's what we're going to move to over the next couple of years in the denial community. We'll have some tools that assist us in identifying critical portions of a denial or appeal. We'll probably even have some ability, as I'll show you, to have a computer, an AI program assist us in writing a response, but ultimately we're going to have to monitor that output and tweak it to this specific condition, which I'll show you here next.
I think the word assist there is very important, Kendall. I mean, because we need to start looking at this technology as something that's actually assisting us rather than something that's actually going to replace us.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly, because it is, you know, when we look at if we just look at the appeal and denial community, if you look at, you know, a chart of 3,000 or 4,000 pages, the amount of information and data that's contained in that, and the need to scrape that data, find the things that are relevant, for example, to sepsis. How do I go through 4,000 pages, find all the information I need, collate that, and then get it into a coherent, well-written response or rebuttal about a patient whose care was being denied for sepsis. So I look at it more as assistive technology than artificial intelligence as relates in our field. And if you go to the next slide, Denise. So this is, I've actually used, full disclosure, I've played with AI. There is at least one program, and I won't mention it because I'm not plugging any technology, that is HIPAA compliant. It doesn't store the information from a chart. It allows you to enter PHI, generate a letter. It doesn't save it. It's not in anybody's database. Both Vivek and I have vetted it and looked at it. We're not endorsing it. I'm just letting you know that it's out there. But in this case, I used a denial, just stripped of PHI with ChatGPT-4 to ask it to write a denial, and I show you the output here and the input. So it's, you can go to the next slide, Denise. So one of the things you have to do in using ChatGPT and a lot of these other assistive or artificial intelligence programs is you have to give it direction. You need to tell it who it's writing to. You need to tell it what kind of tone to use. You really need to set some guidelines and goals around it. Just like if you had an executive assistant who was going to write a letter for you, you'd give that person the same type of direction. So in this case, I asked it to write a letter to a medical director to identify who was getting it, working for a health insurance company to set, what would be appropriate for this person to know. And this was a medical necessity argument where allegedly the insurer was saying this could have been dealt with on an outpatient basis, not inpatient. That inpatient care, not observation care, was appropriate for their member who was 85 years old. And you can see I fed it a few vitals and laboratory studies. I asked it to calculate a SOFA score, comment on a mortality rate. You can set a tone of the letter. In this case, I told it to be professional. You can tell it to be sarcastic. You can tell it to be casual, and anything you want to tell it in terms of an output, it will mimic that. And then the audience, just to remind it, is another physician, and I wanted it to cite sepsis 3 criteria. So here's the output, Denise, if you could. It's 2 pages, but we'll get into this. So this is what came out. Took 4 seconds, after I put that in to generate this. And at first glance, it seems like a decent letter, but there are some things missing that we'll get into. Blah, 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 85-year-old gentleman admitted to the hospital under observation status, believed that inpatient care was appropriate, given the severity of his condition in accordance with the guidelines outlined in sepsis 3. The information that we fed it about the vitals, these clinical indicators strongly suggest the presence of sepsis, life-threatening condition that requires immediate and intensive medical intervention. Blah, blah, blah. I've calculated the sequential organ failure assessment SOFA score for the patient based on the provided clinical parameters. If you could scroll down just a wee bit, Denise, or is it to the next page?
Yeah, I think it's on the next page.
Next page. So, and it gave a total of, let's go back 1 page, because this is where it gets really kind of humorous, scary, frightening. So if we add this up, it gave it a score of 8 points based on this. And I asked it, and that's not right. And I asked this, had this rewrite this letter 3 times with the exact same data, and I got 3 different SOFA scores. So feeding it the same data set, asking it to calculate the SOFA score, it came up with 3 different SOFA scores with the same set of data. So when we go back to saying, this is assistive intelligence, it's not artificial intelligence, there's got to be a human sitting here looking at the output saying, is this correct? Is this realistic? Do I need to double check this? The answer is absolutely yes. And we'll go to the next page. And it goes on and talks in generalities. And that's one of the things that I really have noticed in writing from AI is that it speaks in generalities. ChatGPT-4, for example, lacks the ability to provide citations to things. And so it may present a convincing argument, but when you're looking for a citation, you can ask it to cite things, but more often than what you're going to not than what you're going to get is what we talked about earlier on, is a hallucination. It's going to be a contrived citation that when you go actually to look to it may not exist. And I found this out working with one of our attorneys last year when we asked it to write a legal brief and cite case law for 2 cases in Tennessee that would be considered on point or precedent setting for the legal argument that we were making related to a denial. It put a beautiful letter together, cited 2 cases, appropriate legal citation behind it. We went and looked up both cases and they had absolutely nothing to do with the issue being argued. But it was put in there so convincingly that unless you were an attorney who stopped for a second and said, I'm going to go back into Westlaw and check what the case treatment was on these cases, you would find out that this was completely erroneous. And there's been a lot of attorneys that have gotten in trouble with judges and some now before the bar for having AI programs write their legal briefs and not read them, and the citations of them have been made up, completely erroneous, misleading, and because the attorney signed it and submitted it, they're responsible for it. And the same thing's going to apply, I think, to us in the appeal community. So great tool in terms of a time saver, but a lot needs to be done, because if you're asking it to calculate a specific number that shouldn't change, a SOFA score, same set of data, 3 different letters, and I get 3 different, wildly different SOFA scores from one. I think the highest one I saw was 10. None of them are right, but it comes across as very convincing. It's very scary. And so my take-home message is this exists. It's worth keeping an eye on. It's certainly being used right now by payers in mass to deny claims. When we look at the volumes of denials that hospitals are getting, there's no way that an individual person can be sitting there reading each case and sending a denial of it, the pace that they're coming. Yet we have to respond to each of these individually. So tools like this, I think, in the coming months and year or two, will become a bigger part of our job. Those people that are considering jumping to different careers, absolutely do not. You're going to be busier than ever. It may make your life a little bit easier, but you're going to fill your time up with other things, I think. And I think, Vivek, you and I talked a little bit about that earlier this morning. We were talking about how this sort of technology will allow people professionally to grow in different directions that they may not even be aware of now.
Exactly. The best case scenario is that this technology allows you to sift through data far faster than any human could do and present you with like what's actually pertinent in a split second, and you actually have time to do other things that actually matter rather than actually go through a 4,000-page document and highlight the parts that are actually relevant.
So we went a little longer than we intended, but we've got 5-10 minutes for questions if folks have any.
Okay, let me see if I can get the question pane open with my wagging mouse. If we're not able to get any of the questions, we do have them saved, of course, with our webinar, and we will do our best to try to answer individually as well as post them to our site within a few weeks. Pardon, what was that, Kendall?
I said, we'll have ChatGPT answer your questions to get back to you.
True. Okay, so my control panel is not wanting to open for me. Again, I apologize for all the technical issues we've had today. But I want to thank you all for joining us today. Make sure if you're looking for those CEUs that you stay on, or when, not stay on, but once you log off, your window will pop up for you to do that survey. CEUs will be emailed to you usually within about a week, because we do double check that you stayed on for the full 53 minutes and you did your survey, and that you also are a member of the association. So remember, CEUs only for members of the association. You can sign up to be a member all the way up until 5 p.m. tonight. We'll send you CEUs. Don't forget about our May virtual workshop. You can go to our website, our spring virtual workshop, and sign up for that now. Like I said, we've had great interest in that, lots of folks signing up. There's 4 different tracks, one for clinical validation, one for coding, one for medical necessity, one for revenue cycle. Lots of CEUs associated with those, so make sure you check those out, and then make sure you see Dr. Smith and I at NPAC if you're planning on going in Coronado in a couple of weeks. And if you have any more information or questions, if you need more information, you have any questions about the webinar today, you can reach Carla, who should be back in the next week or two at Carla K. Harabi at PayerWatch.com, or you can contact Dr. Kendall Smith at ksmith@PayerWatch.com. This webinar has been recorded and will be posted on our website typically within about a week. The recording will be there for you. So thanks everyone for attending. I'm going to go ahead and close out the webinar for today. You all have a great spring, have a great weekend, and we will see you in May. No webinar for April because of the May virtual workshop. We're going to be preparing for that. So we'll see you then. Thanks everyone.
Thanks everyone.